Good afternoon and welcome to the University of Tasmania series for alumni Explore. Welcome. As a reflection of this institution's recognition of the deep history and culture of this island, the University of Tasmania wishes to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Palawa people, the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet, and we pay respect to elders, past, present, and emerging. My name is Rob Blanford, and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Relations here at the university. This series, Explore, provides an opportunity specifically for you, alumni of the University of Tasmania, for lifelong learning and inspiration. This series offers an exclusive opportunity to connect with your peers, find amongst them innovators, thought leaders, and perhaps even potential collaborators. You are an important part of the fabric of the university, and that is why we hope to provide opportunities tailored to your needs, such as this one today. So just a few housekeeping notes before today's In Conversation gets underway. Your microphone, camera, and raised hand function have all been disabled, so our guest will not be interrupted. But we do encourage you to ask questions of our speaker today, and this can be done by typing them into the Q&A function you will see on your screens. We may not get to all of your questions, however, a selection will be answered during the Q&A section later in the session. And finally, this session is being recorded for later access on our YouTube channel. And after the session is completed, we will send the link to watch the recording to everyone who has registered. Which brings us on to today. We're going to meet one of our alumni community who is a multi-award-winning lawyer based in Hobart, Tasmania. He is also an award-winning speaker, trainer, and public speaking and presentation skills coach, running his own business, which is www.theokap, that's theokap.com.au. Theo is also the author of Away with Words, published by Rethink Press. He's held senior legal roles, including most recently as General Counsel at Evergen and the Legal and Commercial Manager at Tourism Tasmania. He has been recognised for his work in the legal and community space, winning several awards, and has been named one of Australia's most influential lawyers by the Australasian Lawyer magazine in both 2022 and 2023. He was also named Speaker of the Year at the 2022 International Coaches Awards. He is a non-executive director of the Association of Corporate Counsel Australia and previously at Business Events Tasmania. In ACC Australia, he's also the Tasmanian Divisional President and Chair of the Sole Legal Officer Special Interest Group. In 2021, Theo took on the role as Executive Director and Licensee of TEDxHobart, and he is the host of a podcast titled Craft Messages That Matter. In 2023, Theo delivered his own TEDx talk at TEDx Katoomba titled Lessons from My Ethnic Lunchbox. Welcome, Theo Kapodistrias.
Hey Rob, great to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you. So Theo, we've got about half an hour of questions prepared for you with our audience. Let's dive in. So I'm going to dial forward to my questions. So let's get right into the career bit. So can you share your journey from commencing a legal career to also becoming an award-winning speaker?
Yeah, sure. So I began my legal career at about 23, not long after I was admitted. I began working at the University of Tasmania as their legal counsel. So that was a fascinating role and being able to do all sorts of amazing things for the university. And during this time, I began getting asked to speak at events pretty regularly. The first one being a large international conference in New Zealand, where myself and some colleagues from the Office of Research Services were asked to speak on some of the things we were working on at the university because we were working in some innovative ways. And that kind of kicked a lot of things off. for me, because not long after that, I began getting asked to speak at legal events around the country. So either as a panelist or keynote speaker, I was just getting flown around all over the place, and I thought, okay, this is awesome. I'm really enjoying, doing this speaking thing. So is there a way that I can kick it off into potentially, I guess, another income stream for me,
Mm.
and doing something that speaking on stuff that I want to speak on rather than stuff that other people want me to speak on. Because generally I'd be asked to speak at events to fill a particular gap on an issue. So at the end of 2019, I sat down and kind of put together a bit of a strategy for what I wanted to speak on. And then at the beginning of 2020, I launched my speaking business. I had a website and had all the marketing plan ready to go and had all the topics ready. And then of course we had COVID. So COVID
Yeah.
gave me some time to, I guess, develop it a bit more and then kick off into the virtual presentation space. So doing webinars and stuff like this, for example, training programs for companies, while also working. But at that point, I'd moved on from the university, having been there for 6 years, and was working in other legal roles after that. But yeah, that's kind of how the whole speaking thing kicked off, and then from there it turned into, I guess, the business I have today, including speaking, coaching, emceeing, and authoring a book.
Yeah. So the coaching piece, that's really interesting. What inspired you to become a public speaking and communication skills coach?
I guess looking at what I was speaking on speaking and how to use our voice and words to show our impact and value to, our employer or to clients and customers, because the main people I tend to work with are professional service providers, corporates, and entrepreneurs. So because I was speaking on this stuff, it made sense for me to then turn this into a program for either one-on-one coaching or group coaching or workshops as well. So I understood the hatred that people have for public speaking because I used to be afraid of it. I used to hate it. And I guess I developed a number of ways to make it formulaic, combining, I guess, the art and science of communication and public speaking together to then give people the skill set to enable them to do it more effectively and easily, giving them the skills to show their true voice and value to their workplace and, events and all sorts of things like that. So really, I just thought because I figured out how to do it for me, I'd see if it works for other people. And then from there, I've been able to work with some amazing clients and companies and do all sorts of really great stuff.
So it's been exciting. It's been a great journey, and I love the comment that you made about combining art and science as well. That's really good. That's how we upskill other people, I guess. Um, so one thing has led to another. So tell us about your involvement with TEDxHobart. What motivated you to take on the role of executive director and licensee of TEDxHobart? I mean, that's a huge gig.
It is a huge gig and it's a gig that's not paid. I want to clarify that because people always say, oh, it looks so glamorous and it's this and that. Yeah, thanks to our valued partners who provide us funds, and that requires a lot of work from me and our committee to seek people to sponsor and contribute to ensure the event can become what it is, including our last event being generously sponsored by UTAS Invent. So we thank the team there for supporting us and what we do. But for me, I've always been a huge fan of the TED franchise. I've loved the videos. Anytime I board a plane, I would download a few TED Talks to listen to while traveling, as well as the Spotify playlist and all that good stuff, and a book.
Yeah.
Um, because it's a nice opportunity to sit down and just concentrate on something and learn something new. And I guess with that love of all things TED, I was really fortunate to get to do a program called TED Masterclass, and I did that through a scholarship program through the Association of Corporate Counsel, so the global arm of the in-house legal network. Out of 45,000 members, they chose 40 people, and I was one of them, which was very exciting. And
Congratulations. Yeah.
thank you, thanks. And I got to learn how to deliver a TED Talk, essentially, or a TEDx style talk. And I recorded one, and that's been used through ATC's programs and conferences. They show it at events now, which is really cool. But because I learned how to do the TED Talk thing, I thought maybe I could make this something I could teach other people and help other people to do it as well. So then I put together a submission to TED to get the license for TEDxHobart, because the licenses are based on names of particular areas. And once I did my submission, 3 weeks later, I was given the license. So thanks to this, program that I did during COVID as well, during 2020, I then I guess put that to motivate me to create this thing, which has been running for 3 years now under my licenseeship, which has been a huge success, and it's been really incredible to see some of our alumni as well to go on and do other stuff, utilizing the platform of TED to propel their careers forward.
Yep. Yeah. You've created a community actually, which is really cool for Tasmania. Um, so thinking about TEDx Hobart then, and your involvement with TED full stop, I guess, the way they do public speaking is quite different. So can you tell us how your TED experience has influenced your approach to public speaking?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I learned so much, even though I'm one of the coaches, I learned so much from everyone who speaks, because it just demonstrates to me the importance of bringing your uniqueness to a talk and a presentation and how you present. And that's always something I always keep top of mind, because we always want to formulate or copy what other people do. Because we see famous people speak and we think, oh, I want to do that. But people aren't there to see a replica version of Barack Obama or Oprah Winfrey. They're there to see you and your expertise. So that's something I always think about when I present. People are here to listen to me speak rather than a fake version of me. But running TED events and putting together the scripts and the presentations for those, I'm always reminded that it's so important to bring a very complicated, interesting concept or idea into an easy to understand thing that can be accessible and understood by anyone in the room, but then anyone who's watching later. Because, of course, with TED, yes, there are people in the room and it's an exciting, fun event, but those videos are recorded and they're put online, and that's where the global exposure for some of these things can go. So anytime you give a presentation on a particular topic, you may be the expert, but not everyone else is. So when you
Mm,
put that presentation together, you need to think about it from that lens of how do we actually create an experience that's going to be accessible to everyone watching.
yeah, and that's great, isn't it? What you said about also you are portraying uniqueness. That's fantastic. That's really exciting and a great feature of this brand. Um, you have yourself delivered a TED talk. So tell us, what was your experience delivering it, and what did you learn from that experience?
Delivering it was so much fun, and it was really interesting because I had never been to Katoomba before, and what I learned is it's really cold there. And this is coming from a Tasmanian, like it was freezing at the time because it was the middle of winter, so I had to mentally prepare myself for that. But what I learned was I had a bit of a disaster the night before, so I flew in and I got there and I went to my motel and it was really cold. So it took me ages to go to sleep. And then suddenly we had I heard this beeping. A fire alarm went off. And
Mm.
I grabbed my phone, my Remarkable, because I'm not letting that set on fire, and bolting out of my room and then, standing by the door ready to get out while other people sort of gradually trickled down. And then the fire brigade came. And it ended up being 1 a.m. by this point, and I had to be at the venue at 8. So quite frustrating. But even though I was completely distracted the next day and exhausted, because of the work I did, the presentation preparation process that I put together, it allowed me to then get on stage and deliver the talk that I'd structured and planned for, because I guess I knew the key message that I wanted to share with everyone. I had slides and visuals where I memorized the key points that attach to those things, because I'm a visual learner. That's
Yeah.
that's really important for me to know how to memorize stuff. I had everything broken up into key points, and I knew the stories and key facts that went with each of those points. So because I did all that work in advance, I was able to then speak confidently, competently, and with authority on the topic that I was really passionate and excited for.
Yeah.
So
When
that's what I learned.
when you watch that recording back, can you see that you're tired, or does it just carry perfectly?
It carries well. It's interesting though, because I'd only been on that stage like the day before to practice, and I started noticing stuff about myself which I hadn't noticed before in terms of, hand movements and stuff like that. So one thing, I'll mention now is always record yourself when you speak and then watch it back and try not to be critical, but analyze what you think you could do better next time. Because I think I've learned stuff even from this that I could do better at the next talk that I do, for example.
There you go. Yeah. So that's a good point. And it's
Mm,
similar for other stuff I've done, like DJing. You record yourself, you hear every little error, and that's good, right? It's a learning process.
yeah.
So you mentioned in your public speaking, you have to be structured. You mentioned points, visuals, stories, examples. What other elements, what are the key elements of an impactful presentation, would you say?
So knowing who your audience is very, very important. And I think that's always a really good starting point. So know who the audience is that you're going to present to and what's important to them, because you can tailor your content to really pack a punch with them. Being clear on what you want to achieve from that presentation as well, and what the outcome will be for the audience. Like, what are they going to gain from listening to you speak on this thing? Having a structure with a logical flow, I think, is really important. So you want to ensure that as you mention things, it makes sense to speak on those in that particular order, so it actually builds to something. Having that clear message in mind, and then knowing the key points that you need to articulate that key message, because you don't want to overwhelm people with too many points. And being really particular with the language that you use. So you want to make sure that it's all like generally plain English. And if there are
Mm.
technical terms used, you explain them so everyone in the audience can be on the same page as you when you're using that language. Being really clear, being really concise. And if you are using slides, it's really important to make sure that they are as simple as possible. So clear images, no more than like 4 or 5 words a slide if you have to use words. If you do want to use a word, maybe just one big word is really impactful to share the thing that you want to share. I think all of these things combined can create a very impactful presentation.
Excellent. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you've done legal qualifications at the university, and you are a lawyer. So tell us, what are the synergies, between the legal profession, being a lawyer, and communication skills?
So I'm because I've always been an in-house lawyer, so I've been general counsel, 2 times legal manager, all that sort of stuff. Um, For me, one of the key synergies between the two is being able to simplify and clarify complicated concepts and knowing how to put them into an easy to understand format for the people that you're speaking to. So if it's my clients, I need to know how to provide legal advice in a format that is going to be understood by them so they can do something with it. Otherwise, I'm just talking into a vacuum, basically. Um, Being, I guess, purposeful and clear when drafting documents, because you need that stuff to be quite clear for people to use. So I guess the other form of communication is writing. So being really clear in that format. Being able to use compelling stories, particularly for negotiations and any advocacy work, knowing how to influence a room full of people is very important. And being able to use your communication to build trust and develop relationships. So each time we talk, we have an opportunity to develop a relationship with the people that we're talking to, and we should be able to use our communication effectively for that. So building rapport, getting people to trust you, knowing how to speak to people in a way that makes them feel like a person. These are things that are really important when we use our communication, and being able to do so in a way that can build trust rather than detract from it is super important. So I think these are some key synergies between the two.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. I think building trust is something that we wouldn't think of, but yeah, it makes so much sense when you say it. So thank you. Um, how do you prepare for a major speaking engagement? What do you need to be ready? Obviously not fire alarms going off at 1 a.m., but
No, we don't need that. It's not a good time. Not again anyway.
mm,
But the first thing is to research. So you need to research the topic. For me, it's probably going to be something that I know about, which is why I've been asked to speak. But for anyone else, you might not know everything about it, but you want to be across everything that you can be. So doing a lot of research is important to then help you prepare. And researching as well who the audience is going to be, which I've mentioned before. But if you're speaking at an industry event, who are the people in the room? If you're speaking at a work thing, who's going to be there? Is it your team? Is it a mix of teams? What's it going to be? Being able to then pick three key points to then highlight your main message is important. So, what are
yep.
the three things you're going to use to articulate the main point that you need to share for everyone? Because what's the main takeaway? You need to think about, I guess, a talk as like as a movie. So, what's the through line, the overlapping theme and thing that's you're going to continue on and share in your, I guess, talk, and how do the key points relate to that? So, it needs to be a clear plot developed through your talk.
Yeah, okay.
And then with each of your points, it's important to then think about, I guess, how you're going to present those. So, I always say create a little box and think I need factual information for people who are logically minded. I need illustrative information like a story or a case study or something for people that are right-brained. Um, and then conclude with, what we've learned from talking about that for your main point. And then do that for each of your points. And then that helps you kind of memorize a bit of a structure and a plan. From there, you can create your materials. So um, a mistake people always make is to get their slide, the PowerPoint up straight away, and that's the first thing they do. When that should be one of the last things you do. You want to create all the content first, and then put that into a PowerPoint slide or a keynote or whatever it is. And then it's practicing. You need to practice. So practice as many times as you can, and figure out a way to practice that works for you. Is it uh, reading aloud? Is it, standing in front of a group of people that you want to practice in front of? AI software is really good for this now as well. And then recording yourself. So recording yourself audibly, visually, and then together, and then noting down things that you've picked up from that. So you can then improve on that next time. And yeah, doing this repeatedly, it just becomes like a process for you. And this is something I talk about in my book as well. Just having a preparation process is super useful to then get you from feeling out of control and uncomfortable to ready and raring to go.
Fantastic. Thank you, Theo. You mentioned, this was not in the pre-prepared questions. If you don't know, apologies. You
All
mentioned
good.
three key points, three
Mhm.
main key points. Is there a psychological reason for that? Do you know?
You don't want to overwhelm people with too much information. So,
Okay.
and it also helps you in terms of structuring how much time you dedicate to everything. So, if you've got a 30-minute presentation, you could then do like a few minutes for an intro. I don't know, 7 minutes per point one, 7 minutes point two, 7 minutes point three, and then your conclusion. So you've got, enough time in that slot to talk about everything that you need, and it gives you some structure as well. I often find people get really either overwhelmed or confused, or they have too much stuff to say. But if
Yep.
you dedicate yourself to just three key things and enough information surrounding it to articulate those points, you're going to be good. And you won't have too much, you won't overwhelm people, and it'll be really clear what you're saying.
Yeah, awesome. So it's good for the speaker and the audience, in other words, which is double win.
It's good for
Yep.
everyone. We love it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So the next question, so Janet Reed is one of our guests today, and she's actually guessed to one of the questions that we were going to ask you. So this one's for Janet. How do you handle nerves or stage fright before speaking in front of an audience? It can be crippling for some people. So what are your tips for that?
It can be crippling. And hello, Janet. Thanks for joining. Um, One thing to do is to first, and this is a bit of a bigger thing, is to understand why you're feeling scared and nervous. Get deep with yourself and understand why you feel this way. And a lot of the time, it's because you really, really care about the engagement and you really, really care about what people think of you and all of that stuff. And it's important to address that. But some quick tips to help you get through nervousness. The first is you want to expel energy because the nervousness will make you a bit jumpy and antsy. So doing star jumps, running up and down a set of stairs. We've had people do this at TEDx, like they're just feeling that sort of anxiousness, and you'll just see them like bouncing up and down. You're like, all right, great. If that helps you,
Yep.
good, because it gets rid of that nervousness. Another thing to do is breathing. And a technique I talk about in my book is box breathing. So
Mm.
you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and you just do this a few times, and it helps calm you down significantly. So that's really important. But another tip, which I tell people to do as well, is you can tell yourself that you're not actually scared, but you're excited because the brain and your body physiologically reacts the same when you're either scared or excited.
Yeah.
So just telling yourself that no, this isn't. I'm not scared. I'm really pumped. I'm excited for this. That'll help as well.
Excellent. So it's reframing it, dealing with it, expelling energy.
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah, exactly.
Um, so we've got a few more questions left, but we're starting to get questions in from the audience as well. So
Mm,
we've got a question from Lisa actually, who wants to address something that you mentioned recently. So Lisa Hathaway, hi Theo, you mentioned AI is a good tool, but I missed in relation to what? Can you elaborate what you meant by this? How you can use AI in this context?
yeah. Hi, Lisa. There are some amazing AI tools out there as like speech coaches. So there's one I use for myself and with clients I work with called Yoodli, so YOOLDI, as an example. And they give you like a little bit of free stuff in there, or you can pay and subscribe. But it will detect stuff such as, non-inclusive language, any ums and ahs that you might use, give you tips on how to summarize some of the key points you're using, for example. So it works as basically having a coach by your side. So AI, as freaky as it is, can also be super helpful. So
Right.
it's a tool that you can use to practice and help you to move to that next phase.
Yeah, and that's great because it saves you having to ask someone to come and sit with you, and so it's creating
Yeah,
another person kind of thing. Excellent.
yeah,
All right, let's go back. We'll go back to the questions that we prepared. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to improve their public speaking skills? Now, I'm thinking that your book is probably a great resource, but tell me what you think.
yeah. Look,
There it is. I love
oh,
it.
what? Where did that come from? Crazy. Um, yeah. Look, obviously having resources available is going to be really useful, and my book is one, and my online course, Communicate for the Impact, is another. Totally not a plug, but it is.
No, you can plug.
Um,
That's all good. Yeah, yeah,
well, I did it anyway, so
yeah.
try and stop me. But a lot of the time, it is just about getting out there and doing it. So the more you do, the more comfortable you feel doing it. So find opportunities to actually give yourself a chance to speak. And we need to remember that all speaking is public speaking. So if you're talking to another person at the water cooler, as the 90s would tell us, um, you you're public speaking. If you're speaking in a team meeting, you're asking a question, that is public speaking. So using those opportunities, and you can start small as well. So if you do want to actually do a formal more formal presentation, ask to present at a team meeting, because these are people that you'll generally be comfortable with, and you could even ask for feedback and then work your way from there. I know there are so many industry conferences that would love to have people participate in. That could also be a really great opportunity for you to, get started in the speaking space if you wanted to. But it's just
Yeah,
about doing it. The more you do it, the more comfortable you feel doing it as well.
good point. Good point. Um, let's go to body language. What role do you think that plays in effective communication?
Body language is an interesting one because it is quite important. If the body language you're using doesn't match what you're saying, it can be very distracting for the audience, and it can essentially make them not believe you. Uh,
Mm.
so your body language is really important. And there are so many things about, people want to see open palms because that demonstrates that you're trustworthy and nice. Obviously, if you're going to be standing on stage tenting your fingers, people are going to be a little probably terrified, because that's a little bit evil. So it's important that the body language that you use is one, authentic to you, because you don't want to suddenly gesticulate because you think you have to. It needs to be relevant to the particular context as well. So you're not going to be doing these ones in a room. And also it needs to represent, I guess, what you're saying, and be open for the particular audience. But of course, if moving your body or body language isn't appropriate for the context, don't do it.
Yeah.
I know that at a TEDx talk in our first year, we had someone speaking on a very, very deep topic, and she was quite a gentle speaker, but she just stood in one spot and faced the audience. And that was perfect for her talk. It was appropriate, it made sense, and it was, yeah, ideal. So
Mm.
for her, amazing.
Calm and powerful.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Um, and going back to what you said before about recording yourself, I guess you can see what your body language is doing and control that maybe if it's necessary to. So
Yeah, yeah. And
awesome.
if just back to, I guess, my TEDx talk, I watched it back and I didn't realize that I aggressively use my pointer, like for the PowerPoint presentations. Like I would do these ones, and I didn't know that until that talk. I think because I had a horrible clicker, but now I'm aware of that. That's something that I can focus on and not do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's good and the bad. Good and
Yeah,
the bad.
yeah, exactly.
Um, the question about tailoring your presentations to different types of audiences. I think you've already mentioned that in some ways.
hmm
You've got to know your audience. Anything else you wanted to mention on that one?
Oh, no, I mean, you do need to understand your audience and do some research on who's there. And then, there's so many techniques you can use. So if it is a particular industry, you can use some industry language and specific terms and examples because that'll help you connect more effectively with them. So that's really important from a tailoring perspective. And then when you're using any stories or facts to articulate the message, you can make those examples and things that are relevant to the people in the room, because that's relevant for the context, and then that articulates your content as well.
Yeah. So storytelling should be relevant as well, basically, and think about,
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, Good question here, actually. How do you stay engaging and how do you keep the audience's attention through a talk? Can that be a challenge?
It can be a challenge, and I think it depends on a few things. So one is how long is the presentation? Because I have sat in rooms that have gone, like presentations that have gone for, over an hour, and I think, wow, this is long. So short and sharp is great. If you are given an allocated time and it is an hour, then it is about, I guess, breaking it up with different things. So can you ask questions of the audience? Because then that engages them and it makes them think. Can you include stuff like a Slido, so a tool to like ask people questions and to vote using their phones in the audience because that creates forms of engagement?
Mm,
Can you shake things up by showing a video? Can you ask people to talk to each other and then share in the room, depending on, I guess, the format of the presentation? There are, quite a few engagement techniques that will work depending on the people and the room that you're in. So that will be important as well, the context. But yeah, I mean, engagement is hard, but being able to, I guess, have those key points that we've mentioned, being able to break it up into segments, uh, and having really good visual media is important as well because
yeah.
people won't get bored of looking at. I mean, people will get bored looking at a white screen with Times New Roman font in black, but they won't get
Mm,
bored of, nice pictures and imagery that actually shares the point that you're talking about.
yeah. Now, this is not a pre-prepared question. Uh, have you noticed any change in audiences? And do you think things like TikTok is going to change people's ability to concentrate, or is it too early to say? Any
Oh
comments?
no, it's affecting people for sure. So I know that I go to a lot of conferences as a speaker, but also as a lawyer, we have to go to a lot of events to earn our CPD. And I know sitting in the room, I'll start off watching someone, and then maybe 10 minutes in, I'll pick up my phone.
Yep.
I'll do a little scroll, put it down, pick it up again. And this is happening to audiences all over. So our brains are losing that ability to maintain attention. So I always think about this when I put a presentation together, and that is how do I make sure I maintain audience attention? And that is
Mm,
through doing some of those engagement activities and having, I use a lot of slides. I use a lot of slides because I like the change in visual media, because then it brightens things up and it shakes the room up a little bit, and then it brings people back to focus on me and the
yeah.
message that I'm sharing, which is important. But
Yeah.
definitely, there is a change in audiences thanks to. I won't blame TikTok because I love it and it's really fun, but because of social media and our shrinking attention spans.
Yeah. So what you mentioned before about Slido. So for people who don't know of that platform, it's Slido. So it's an online voting system that enables audiences to engage with their speaker. So the speaker can set questions, a poll, and then people, yeah, pick up their phone and they can vote. So yeah, it's good they're getting that phone fix whilst engaging with your presentation. So
That's right.
that's good. Yeah. And just so that our audience know today, anything that Theo has mentioned, we will put it in the email that we send out afterwards, along with the recording. So the link to Theo's book, website, any resources he's mentioned. So we'll be all over that for you. Um, the book. How do you go? I mean, a book is a huge undertaking, right? It's a lot of writing, editing. What was the inspiration and what was the journey from getting to all this knowledge you have and actually getting it down on a page?
So I had a lot of fun doing. I did a book writing course to learn how to actually structure it because I had this idea for ages, and I thought, how do I put it together into a book? Because I had no idea. So I have I call it my 5C methodology, and I use that as each part of the book. So it has 5 parts. The 5Cs are clarity, uh, conciseness, confidence, creativity, and connection. And each part has 2 chapters as well as an intro and conclusion. So the course taught me, okay, those are the 5 parts that you have, and you need to then build up chapters underneath each, and then you need to think about all the content. So in the first day of my book writing course, I had the entire book mapped out as to what was going to be included in it,
That's
which I
great.
didn't think was possible, right? Crazy. And then after the course was done, it was only a 3-day course. Um, I had, I guess, the introduction chapter completed, and then from there, I just had to figure out, all right, now it's about writing it and putting it together, doing the research, getting all the case studies, getting permission from people to mention them, all that stuff, and chuck it in. And at first, I was moving really quickly through it, really, really quickly. and then I stopped and kept picking it up every once in a while. Anyway, 2 years later, it was finished and out there in the world, which is great. And right here, what? Where'd that come from? Which is great. And yeah, for me, the big motivation behind it was so many people hate or are afraid of public speaking and presentation skills, aren't necessarily the most effective communicators. I wanted to make a very accessible tool for people to give them the skills to enable them to do this in an effective and easy way. And for a relatively affordable price, the book is accessible. It's not too big, only 40,000 words. Um, you know, Someone has described it as having a coach in your back pocket because it just gives people the relevant tools that they can then pick up and read and say, oh, what did Theo say about a preparation process, or what's a good structure to use to create my talk, or whatever. All that stuff's in here. So it's one of those useful tools that I encourage people to just keep with them, keep it on their desk, and pick it up when you have an opportunity that comes along.
Fantastic. So that's a little bit of your uniqueness on those pages right there. So
That's it. Yeah.
fantastic. Right, we've got some great questions coming in from our audience today. I'm going to go to the first question. We have a question from Farouz Ali. Theo, I speak often to recorded media, so TVs and podcasts, especially on Q&A sessions. I find speaking in this context stressful since it's both recorded for public consumption and I need to be authoritative. I'm into public speaking training for nearly 7 years now, but still find this process daunting. Any ways to be better? Any tips for Farouz?
Well, I mean, in between all of those recorded sessions, are engaging in as much public speaking as you can? Uh, I think being able to ensure that you can just do more of it, and maybe using some of these AI tools and that coaching could be really helpful. But before you get to those opportunities, maybe it could be useful to give yourself the opportunity to practice some of these techniques, to practice some breathing techniques, um, reframe your thinking every time you go out into those opportunities, so you're feeling super comfortable when doing it. I think that should help. But of course, drop me a message if you want. We can connect on LinkedIn, and yeah, happy to see if there's any help I can provide.
Thank you, Theo. That's great. And thank you for offering to help a fellow member of your alumni community.
No problem.
Um, Next question from Uma Sriharsha. I'm very interested in TEDx events. Could you please let me know how I can get in touch with the TEDx team?
Well, there is no TEDxHobart this year because I have a few other priorities this year to focus on, but feel free to connect with us on Facebook or Instagram. It's just TEDxHobart, one word, and I'm on the other end of that. So yeah, if you drop us a message, I'll be able to respond to you. But yeah, this year we're not going to have the major TEDx event, but we are looking at doing some smaller things. So hopefully we'll have some engaging and fun stuff to bring to the Hobart community. But yeah, it won't be the large scale 1 day conference that we normally do. But that will be back next year.
Fantastic. Thank you. Another question from Siam Mohan. Great to hear your story, Theo. I'm a passionate follower of TED as well. I was fortunate to be myself on the TEDx stage for a speech last year. It was one of the most satisfying times of my life. That's really awesome to hear. Can you give us a brief about how did you end up making it a career? I mean, how did you find opportunities for paid? So he's interested in paid public speaking. Any ideas there?
I mean, this is a whole other webinar in itself, but
Mm,
briefly, you need to be really clear on the message and the point that you're sharing with your audiences. So for me, my whole thing is communication, presentation skills. Like that's my niche, and that's why people come to me. Um, Other than the legal stuff, because that's a whole separate bucket. But for my, I guess, paid engagements, it's only on this stuff. So being really clear and creating a brand around that is critical, and then putting that out into the world, because you become the expert at that thing. So when people know you as the expert of that topic, then that is why people want to engage with you.
Yeah.
So it's then also about, I guess, being able to find this opportunity. So pitch. If you see a conference coming, pitch to be the keynote speaker. You've got,
Yeah,
and then
that's good.
yeah, go from there.
Do, have you got an SEO optimized website so that people can find you as a public speaker talking about communications as well? Is that
Yeah. So I've had a whole heap of SEO work done, and still doing more of it as well, because I had a whole audit done. So I've got plenty of things to fix up in the back end. But yeah, it's a big factor.
Yeah, okay. So you've got to be findable. Yeah.
Mm.
Great question here from Kylie Sullivan. Kylie says, "Hi Theo, some great tips. Thank you. What are your thoughts on having notes and how to gradually eliminate the need to have them?" Kylie goes on to say that she's relatively new to public speaking. However, her notes tend to be a crutch. I only glance at them occasionally for fear of losing my train of thought. I prefer also not to stay put behind a podium and have notes on a laptop, as I prefer to move around a little. So, thoughts on notes?
That's great. And this can also be like a whole webinar in itself.
Mm,
Using notes doesn't have to be a bad thing. So I've seen people use notes brilliantly. When people don't use notes well, it's when they read. It's when they read from their notes, and it just sounds like someone is reading at you. And I have a story about that in my book as well. Um, but one thing to do is I often get people to get their whole talk on a script, and then go through with a highlighter and or a pen, and just note down, I guess, the key things that you want to keep. And if you follow the structure that I've provided, that is main message, key points, you'll know exactly what's there. So you can pull away from all the sort of fluffy stuff, and you just have the key points. So you should be able to move away from a whole like full script, which could be, thousands of words, to just a one pager of introduction, point. Uh, First section, point, like factual thing, story, and that ends up being it. And then you can then connect that with your visual media. So if you then, as you practice with your notes and you practice with your slides. If you're practicing enough, you'll be able to then know what the slide is for that point, because you'll visually connect the two together. So
yeah,
then you'll start relying less on notes, and instead, just flow about without it. And if you're using a computer, though, there is the potential to, I guess, do the split screen thing where you've got your slides there, and then on the other side you've got speaker's notes. So you could hopefully reduce those down just to a few keywords, so you can just glance over and then see keyword, and that should spark the rest of it, hopefully.
yeah. Question from me, Theo, actually. So I
hmm
understood, maybe I'm not sure how long ago this applied, that TED actually it was forbidden to use notes. You had to memorize everything. Is that still the
hmm
case?
Yeah. At our events, we don't have notes. No one has
Yeah,
notes. Oh,
yeah,
I mean, we had one person who used notes, but he had a brain injury and doesn't have long-term memory. So we said,
sure.
that is very acceptable for you to have notes there. But for most TED events, I know for my TEDx event, I did not have notes. I just stood there and talked. So it is a memory game. But I will say this, if you've ever seen TED, like the big conference in Toronto, the big TED global event that costs
Mm,
10,000 USD a ticket, you'll have speakers who are happily doing their talk, and then suddenly they need a glass of water, and then they run to the back of the room, grab their notes and have a look through, then come back. That's edited out. So I've seen it live, and you don't see that on camera. And we've had to prompt people before, if they've missed their spot, because forgetting what you're saying is totally normal. And the
yeah.
audience don't really care. They're like, you know
Mm,
what, you've done a great job. This is an awesome thing. And maybe you forgot a point towards, I don't know, minute 12 of 18, but that's cool. We're going to forget about it.
yep. It's the human experience as well, isn't it? I guess. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good, good. So there's more great questions rolling in. You're going to love some of these. A really good question from Maria Lorena Tanduff. How do you deal with smart Alex or worse, hecklers? Have you had to deal with that? Great
That's
question.
great. So I'm quite sarcastic, uh, and I don't mind throwing a comment back at someone else. But generally, if you don't need to play mean with other people, sometimes I do that. But I think you could just say something like, "That's a really great question, and we're going to talk about that at afternoon tea. So why don't you find me after and we can discuss?" Rather than having to deal with it at the time. Or if you can reframe the question to be something that you actually want to answer, that's fine as well. Hecklers, if people are heckling as adults, that's hopefully at like a comedy show and not a professional conference. If they're heckling and attacking you, then they should be escorted out,
Agree.
quite frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've seen it at a comedy show and it's brutal and it's embarrassing. And often they are actually drunk. So, yes, I hope
Yeah,
that never happens to any of our alumni at a public speaking engagement. So, yeah, but good. So your tactic would be to sort of derail it, change the topic, or suggest that they speak to you afterwards. So that's good.
yeah. It
Yeah.
could be a case of just saying, "Oh, I don't think we have enough time in this Q&A session to answer that. So come
Mm.
find me after and we can have a conversation about it. Thanks for your question. Anyway, who's next?"
So we've got another great question here. Shannon Atkinson. Hi, Theo. I'm new in a coaching role, and I often find myself up against a bit of imposter syndrome, or at the least an uncertainty that I'm the best person to speak on the topic that I'm employed to speak on. Do you have any thought process that you go through to be sure that you're the best person to present when you're asked?
Great question. I talk about
Mm.
this in chapter 6, but I will mention that I think it's really important that you have been chosen to speak on the thing because you hold a mountain of value. Now, you might not be the world's expert, but you are an expert at what you know. Now, you've got runs on the board. Maybe that's education. Maybe you've got a degree in this thing. Maybe from the University of Tasmania. Maybe you've worked in this field for a number of years. Maybe you've got that practical experience. This is all your intellectual capital that you bring to a presentation. So anytime you have that imposter syndrome, it's important to think back to say, okay, actually, what do I know about this? I know quite a lot. Why am I the right person? Well, I've done all the work. So that's why I'm speaking on it. Why am I speaking on this? I wrote a book about it. I've also done it for a number of years. So that's why I'm here, for example. And that's something I always remind myself of. But yeah, no, that is something that I've come across a lot in the people I've worked with, and we've had this at TEDx where we've had people say, "I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can speak on this thing." I'm like, "Yeah, you can. You've been chosen, and you've been chosen for this reason. So we believe in you. So you need to believe in yourself." And
Yep.
then yeah, that's super helpful.
I love it. Thank you, Theo. A question here from Martha Palacio. Hi, Theo. I have an interview this week for TV. Do you notice that something changes from talking to a group of people to going on TV? Any advice so I don't embarrass myself? Great question.
Great question. And how exciting. Can we watch you? Let us know some deets and we'll find you. Um, I mean, having a big camera in your face is never fun. But what's really good is you get to focus on the journalist. So I always recommend, I guess one thing that is be really clear on the key message that you're sharing. Um, I've done some media training with people before, and the thing is, you need to be really clear on the thing that you have that you want to speak on, and try and articulate that in some words and practice it so you know the message that you want to share, and just be really clear on that. So you feel more comfortable and confident. Look at the reporter that's talking to you. You don't need to look into the camera because that uh, is awkward, and no one needs you to do this. But for TV anyway. But if you're looking at the reporter, you're actually just having a conversation. So I want you to reframe
Right.
it to this isn't a presentation or an interview. It's a conversation with that person over there. And that will make you feel a little bit more comfortable.
That's a
But
great way
yeah,
to think. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, just be really clear on the key message that you want to share and try and articulate that in that conversation. 'Cause it's not an interview, it's a convo. Like what we're having, Rob. We're having a convo.
We are absolutely. Yes.
So there you
Perfect.
go. Yeah.
Few more questions. Yeah, we've got about 4 minutes left. So, what I will just say, so Sarah, who's one of my colleagues here at the university, has just alerted me that we actually ran an event at the university about what is called the imposter phenomenon. And in fact, we have an academic at the university, Professor Terry Simpkin, who is an expert on the imposter phenomenon and how people can deal with it. So what we'll do, we'll actually include that link in that email follow-up afterwards, because that's really interesting research. So thank you, Sarah, for bringing that to our attention. Um, Good question here from Matsi Yaganegi. What's the best way to communicate sensitive messages assertively and respectfully while ensuring it has the intended impact?
Oof, great question. I think you really need to think about what the message is and who it's in front of. So I was talking to an HR manager once, and she had to let people know that they weren't going to get their bonuses or a pay rise. Um, but she delivered it without any empathy, right? So all she did was go into the room and say, "Hello, you are not getting your bonus. The company has not performed well this year. Sorry." And then it's bolted. So what
Mm,
do you think happened? Everyone was pretty frustrated because they got a robot to speak to them rather than a human. So it's really important to focus on a level of empathy because that is really important for these conversations, yeah, particularly when it's sensitive. Being really mindful of the tone used because of whatever that the information is and the circumstances. Obviously, I don't know much about it to provide specific advice, but ensuring that the tone matches the context that it's going to be delivered in. And then in terms of authoritativeness, it's using clear language to communicate it. So we're not trying to confuse people or complicate things. It's just in plain and simple terms, this is what it is. Flowery. Oh God, that's hard to say. Language.
flowery, yeah.
Well, it's tricky. Does not help things. And I think of Brene Brown when she says, "Clear is kind, unclear is unkind." So being clear with what you're saying is going to be the most critical thing.
Mm, that's good. Empathy, so important in so many
Mm.
contexts. So thank you, Theo. Uh, we're going to have to wrap up there because we're at 59 minutes past. So I want to say, on behalf of the entire alumni community and from my perspective as well, sincere thanks for joining us today. Your insights were fascinating, and I do encourage everyone to access Theo's book, which I understand is now in the UTAS library. So in fact, there'll be a video coming out soon featuring Theo delivering the book to the library. So that's very, very cool. So thank you, Theo. Um, let me just minimize what I can see here. So yeah, the great session today. I'd like to encourage everyone to look out for invites in your inbox with some other opportunities to engage with the university. So on April 1st, we have our Engineers Australia Engineer of the Year 2004-2005, Gillian Formentin. She's an alumna of the university. She'll be coming back to join us in Hobart for a week of activities on campus centered around engineering. So between April 7 and 10, we have Community Fest in the Cradle Coast, some fantastic opportunities to get involved in Burnie. So we'll send you details of those if you're in the region. And lastly, the Tasmanian School of Business and Economics is hosting a career conversations event on April 11, featuring our Chancellor, Alison Watkins. So Alison will be talking about her stellar career and also her involvement with the university, but also encouraging deep and rich conversations with other members of the alumni community that will help you and build your lives and careers. So as always, if you have information, if you'd like further information, please contact the alumni team at alumni.office utas.edu.au. We look forward to hearing from you. From me today, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for your great questions. Thanks once again to Theo. It was a delight talking to you as always. And we look forward to speaking to you all soon. Thank you very much.